Behind every locked door lies a story the world was never meant to hear. Welcome to Behind Bars TV, where we uncover the hidden realities of the world's toughest prisons, untold inmate experiences, and the systems built to contain them. From supermax facilities to forgotten penitentiaries, we revealed the truth behind concrete walls and razor wire. This is not fiction. This is the world behind bars. The prison that held the worst. There's a prison in New York that has held killers, gang leaders, assassins, and men so violent even other inmates feared them. A place where executions once happened just steps from the cells. A place where silence was a survival skill. For more than a century, the most dangerous inmates in America passed through these walls. Some never left alive. This is Sing Correctional Facility, one of the most infamous prisons in United States history. And tonight, we're going inside the stories of the men considered the most dangerous to ever be locked inside it. Who they were, what they did, and how the prison handled them. Because in Sing, reputation could keep you alive or get you buried. Why Sing became a prison for the unmanageable. Sing opened in 1826. Built along the Hudson River, it was designed for one purpose: control through severity. Early prison systems believed harsh routine created obedience. Silence rules, chain labor, isolation blocks. This was not rehabilitation. This was containment, the transfer destination. Over time, Sing developed a reputation inside the prison system itself. When an inmate caused too many problems elsewhere, when violence followed them, when discipline failed, they were transferred here. Not for comfort, for control. The execution prison. Sing was once New York's primary execution site. Hundreds of condemned inmates spent their final days here. The presence of the execution chamber changed the psychology of the prison. Every inmate knew some doors only open once, and never again. That reality shaped behavior. It also shaped fear. Why dangerous inmates feared it too. Even the most violent prisoners respected one thing: finality. Sing represented the end of appeals, the end of delays, the end of negotiation, which meant the men who caused chaos elsewhere often arrived here already hardened and already desperate. A dangerous combination. How prisons define most dangerous. In prison, dangerous is not a rumor. It's a classification. Before an inmate ever reaches a high-security facility like Sing, their file is reviewed line by line. Not just the crime, but behavior inside custody, violence against staff, assaults on other inmates, weapon possession, escape attempts, gang command roles. Every incident adds weight. And once a threshold is crossed, an inmate is no longer considered disruptive. They are labeled high risk to institutional safety. That label follows them everywhere. The red flag factors. Correctional systems flag inmates as extreme risk when they show repeated assault patterns, organized intimidation, leadership in violent groups, manipulation of weaker inmates, willingness to attack authority directly. This isn't about temper. It's about predictable threat. And Sing historically received many of those men. How a violent reputation is built inside prison. Outside prison, reputation comes from records. Inside prison, it comes from stories. Stories travel faster than paperwork. Who fought 3 men and didn't fall. Who refused orders and paid the price. Who cannot be pressured. Reputation is currency. And in high-security prisons, currency equals protection. Why some inmates choose fear. Fear deliberately. Because fear reduces challenges. If no one tests you, you don't have to prove yourself again. But this strategy has a cost. The more feared you become, the more closely you are watched. By inmates and by staff. The staff side of the file. Correction officers maintain something unofficial. Behavior notes. Not formal charges, but patterns. Who escalates fast. Who manipulates conversations. Who recruits followers. When multiple officers write the same warning, classification changes follow. That's how inmates move into tighter control units. The gang power structure inside Sing Sing. Danger in prison is rarely random. It is organized. Across decades, Sing Sing housed inmates connected to major street and prison gangs. Not because the prison wanted them concentrated, but because high-risk transfers often carry gang ties. Inside, structure appears quickly. Leaders, enforcers, messengers, recruiters. Even under constant surveillance, hierarchy forms. Why gang leaders are considered higher risk than violent loners. A violent individual is dangerous. A violent organizer is strategically dangerous. They don't just act. They direct. They influence housing units, control contraband flow, coordinate silence. That makes them harder to manage than impulsive offenders, which is why they are often placed under movement restrictions, communication monitoring, segregated housing, rotational transfers, the control response. When influence spreads, control tightens. Because prison authorities understand one operational truth. A unified inmate power structure is harder to manage than scattered individuals. So disruption becomes policy. Leaders are separated. Associates are reassigned. Communication channels are cut, not as punishment, but as containment strategy. And the inmates most often subjected to these measures are the ones labeled institutionally dangerous. Inmates, even guards, feared. Correction officers are trained not to fear inmates. But experience creates exceptions. Across decades at Sing Sing, certain inmates developed reputations that changed how staff approached them. Not because of mythology, but because of behavior patterns. Repeated assaults, calculated intimidation, unpredictable escalation. These were inmates who did not posture. They acted. The difference between loud and dangerous. The loudest inmate is rarely the most dangerous. Veteran officers watch for the opposite. Quiet focus. Minimal talk. No emotional spikes. Because controlled aggression is more threatening than visible anger. The inmates who caused the most serious incidents were often described the same way. Calm until they weren't. Staff protocol changes. When an inmate crossed the high-threat threshold, procedures changed. 2-officer escort minimum. Restraint checks before movement. No blind spot positioning. Tactical response teams on standby during transfers. Not dramatic. Not theatrical. Just layered precaution. Because predictability saves lives inside prison walls. Control tactics used on high-risk inmates. Managing the most dangerous inmates is not about force. It's about structure. High-risk inmates at facilities like Sing Sing are managed through restriction systems, not constant confrontation. Movement is scheduled. Routes are cleared. Contact is minimized. This reduces opportunity, which reduces incidents. The layered security model. Security is built in layers. Layer 1, physical barriers. Layer 2, escort procedures. Layer 3, behavior monitoring. Layer 4, intelligence gathering. Layer 5, separation controls. Each layer exists because one layer alone fails. Dangerous inmates test systems. So systems must overlap. Privilege as a control tool. Contrary to popular belief, control is not maintained by taking everything away. It's maintained by conditional access. Phone time. Program access. Movement flexibility. Privileges become behavioral levers. Lose control, lose access. Regain control, regain movement. It is behavioral economics behind bars. Isolation and the psychology of high-threat housing. When inmates become too dangerous for general population, they are placed in segregated housing, commonly called isolation units. Movement alone. Meals alone. Recreation alone. The goal is not revenge. The goal is risk reduction. Why isolation is controversial. Isolation works operationally. Incident rates drop. Organizing collapses. Immediate threats decrease. But psychological costs rise. Extended isolation effects. Impulse control. Sleep patterns. Emotional regulation. Social response. Which creates a paradox. the tool that reduces violence short-term, may increase instability long-term. How staff balance risk versus damage. Modern correctional policy tries to limit long isolation periods. But when inmates present repeated physical danger, options narrow. Administrators face a hard equation. Protect many by restricting one. There are no perfect answers inside maximum security. Only trade-offs. When control fails, even the best systems fail. Doors jam. Signals are missed. Escalations happen faster than response. At Sing Sing, as in every high-security prison, there have been moments when control slipped. Not riots, but sudden violent incidents. Fast, localized, serious. The response clock. In high-risk prisons, response time is measured in seconds. Alarm, lockdown, tactical arrival, medical check. Everything is drilled. Because once violence starts inside a secure facility, speed is the only stabilizer. The high-risk inmates who made staff change procedure. Every long-running, maximum security prison develops a private list. Not public, not posted, but known. Inmates whose arrival changes procedure. Extra escort staff. Modified housing decisions. Movement alerts issued in advance. Not because of fame, but because of behavior patterns across facilities. Repeated assaults. Weapon improvisation. Authority targeting. These inmates don't just break rules. They stress test the system. Why transfer history matters. An inmate transferred repeatedly between high-security prisons is often more concerning than one serving a longer sentence in one place. Transfers signal one thing. Other facilities could not stabilize them. That history follows the inmate into every new cell. The myth of the born prison monster. Public imagination creates a stereotype. The unstoppable prison predator. Reality is more complex. The most dangerous inmates are rarely chaotic all the time. They are situationally violent, triggered by status threats, control disputes, gang conflicts, perceived disrespect, restriction escalation. Danger inside prison is rarely random. It is patterned, and patterns can be why pattern violence is harder to stop. Impulsive violence can be predicted by emotion. Pattern violence is planned. That makes it quieter and more dangerous. How prison intelligence tracks threat. Most viewers never hear about prison intelligence units, but they exist in every major facility. Their job is not punishment. Their job is prevention. They track association maps, conflict signals, message patterns, contraband routes, behavior shifts. Because the most dangerous inmates rarely announce intent. They telegraph it quietly. Small signs that trigger big alerts. Things that raise internal alerts. Sudden silence between rivals. Unusual commissary transfers. Movement requests that break routine. Indirect communication chains. To outsiders, meaningless. To prison intelligence, warnings. Escape thinking versus escape attempts. High-risk inmates are often evaluated not just for violence, but for escape mindset. There is a difference between fantasy and planning. Escape thinkers talk. Escape planners measure. Distances. Timing. Staff rotation. Hardware age. Most never attempt. But the ones who do always leave indicators first. Why most plans die early. Modern layered security makes escape extremely unlikely. Most attempts fail in the planning phase. Because intelligence units detect the pattern shift, not the act. Officers who specialize in high-threat inmates. Not every correction officer works high-threat units. Those assignments go to officers with emotional control, pattern recognition, de-escalation skill, procedural discipline. Because confrontation is failure. Control is success. The rule they live by. Veteran officers teach one rule. Never match an inmate's emotion. Match the procedure. Procedure wins. Emotion escalates. The modern high-security control model. High-risk inmate management today looks very different from the past. Control is no longer based on intimidation alone. It is built on systems engineering. layered doors, timed movement, camera coverage, electronic logging, escort choreography. Every movement is recorded. Every delay is flagged. Every deviation is reviewed. Not because every inmate is violent, but because the few who are can change everything in seconds. Control without constant force. Modern prison control philosophy follows a principle. The less physical confrontation required, the more effective the system. So architecture does the first job. Procedure does the second. Staff intervention is the last layer, not the first. That shift reduced injuries for both officers and inmates. But it also made high-risk inmates easier to isolate from influence, which changes prison power dynamics. Rehabilitation versus containment, the internal conflict. Here is the contradiction at the center of high-security incarceration. The most dangerous inmates are also the hardest to rehabilitate because they are the most restricted. Programs require group trust. High-risk status requires separation. Education needs access. Security demands limitation. So administrators face a constant tension. Reduce risk now, or build change later. Not every facility resolves this balance the same way. When program access is conditional, some high-risk inmates earn program access step by step. Behavior access. Stability opportunity. Consistency expansion. It is slow, but measurable. Because in maximum security, progress is never assumed. It is demonstrated. The myth versus reality of most dangerous. The phrase most dangerous inmate creates a dramatic image. But reality is more precise. Danger inside prison is not defined by the original crime alone. It is defined by institutional behavior. Some inmates convicted of severe crimes are stable inside prison. Some convicted of lesser crimes are repeatedly violent inside custody. Risk is situational, dynamic, continuously reassessed. Why labels change? An inmate can move from high risk to monitored to stable classification, or the reverse, because behavior in confinement reveals different traits than behavior outside. Prison danger is not static. It evolves. What actually makes an inmate high risk? Across correctional systems, high-risk designations usually come from 5 repeating factors. 1. Pattern violence. Not one incident, repeated incidents. 2. Authority targeting. Direct aggression toward staff. 3. Organized influence. Ability to mobilize others. 4. Weapon improvisation. Creating tools of harm from ordinary items. 5. Control resistance. Persistent refusal of structured order. When these combine, classification rises. Restrictions follow. Why most inmates are not high risk. Despite public perception, the majority of inmates, even in maximum security, are not classified as extreme threat. But the small percentage who are consume the majority of security resources. Because risk concentration, not population size, drives prison security design. The psychology of controlled violence. The most dangerous inmates are rarely in a constant state of rage. That's a myth. What makes them dangerous is something more difficult to detect. Controlled violence. Not explosive. Not emotional. Not loud. Measured. These inmates don't lose control. They apply it. They choose timing. They choose targets. They choose moments when supervision is weakest. That's why experienced officers say the same thing. It's not the angry ones that worry you most. It's the patient ones. Why patience increases risk. Impulsive actors are predictable. Planners are not. Planning requires emotional regulation, observation, delay tolerance. Those traits, outside prison, are strengths. Inside prison, combined with hostility, they become threat multipliers. The most dangerous moments in a prison day. Danger inside prison is not evenly distributed across time. It clusters around transition moments. Cell release, movement to meals, program changes, escort transfers, medical runs. Because movement creates variables. Variables create opportunity. Why movement is risk. Inside a locked cell, risk is contained. During movement, risk breathes. That's why high-risk inmates are moved differently. Staggered timing, cleared corridors, pre-secured destinations. Not for drama, for probability control. How staff read PRE incident signals. Before most serious prison incidents, there are signals. Small ones. Behavior shifts like sudden withdrawal, unusual calm after conflict, changed association patterns, refusal of routine privileges, increased scanning of staff positions. To untrained eyes, nothing. To veteran staff, warning lights. The behavioral baseline rule. Every inmate develops a behavioral baseline. When behavior breaks baseline without explanation, attention increases. Because in high-security environments, deviation predicts escalation. Informal power versus official power. Every prison has two power systems. Official power, staff authority. Informal power, inmate influence. The most dangerous inmates often hold informal power. Not through size. Not through volume. Through decision influence. Who eats where? Who talks to whom? Who is protected? Who is isolated? Influence without title is harder to remove. Why informal power triggers transfers. When informal power grows too strong, administrators don't argue with it. They relocate it. Transfers are often not punishment. They are power disruption tools. The transfer loop of high-risk inmates. Some high-risk inmates develop what officers call the transfer loop. Facility, incident, restriction, transfer, repeat. Each move resets their influence, but not their behavior. These inmates become known across institutions. Their files grow thick. Their movement grows tighter. Why some never stabilize. Stabilization requires routine, trust channels, predictability. High-risk inmates often destroy all three, which keeps them cycling through higher control environments. Architecture as a security weapon. Modern prison architecture is built around one idea. Delay equals safety. Multiple doors. Angle turns. Visibility choke points. Sound travel design. Architecture is not passive. It is defensive strategy in concrete and steel. Why older prisons are harder to control. Historic facilities were built for confinement, not dynamic threat management. Retrofitting them requires procedural compensation. More staff, more checkpoints, more escort layers. Structure makes up for design limits. What you just saw is more than a story. It's a reality lived by thousands behind bars. If you believe in uncovering the truth, the kind hidden behind concrete walls and silence, then join us. Subscribe to Behind Bars TV and never miss a chapter in the world's most dangerous stories. Until next time, stay aware, stay informed, subscribe, and stay locked in. Until next time, keep your mind open and your curiosity sharp. Remember, freedom and confinement are sometimes only a wall apart.